With AI disruption in full swing across companies, are we actually approaching a world where the entire world of work is going to change? What happens if we actually get to a place where humans don't have to work in the traditional sense? We're going to discuss what the future of your job might entail on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is Anish Raman. He is the Chief Economic Opportunity Officer at LinkedIn. Welcome to the show, Anish.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
All right. So I think you are the first Chief Economic Opportunity Officer I've ever interviewed. So can you tell me at least what this sounds like a made-up title?
Yeah, it is, because we just made it up about 6 months ago. I think I'm the not just first at LinkedIn, but the only one anywhere. And so, yes, it's a good question. What does this job do, given that I think, the first person to have it? And really, it was born of a conversation our CEO and I were having last year, where our vision at LinkedIn is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. Economic opportunity is core to our product. It's core to our company. It's core to our culture. It's core to the impact we hope to have in the world. And as we'll talk about today, we are living through a historic, if not unprecedented, moment of changes hitting work. And work is the primary, means that people access economic opportunity. And so we've stood up this role to really first help everyone understand the bigness of change that's happening so that we can make our vision a reality in our time, which is quite ambitious given that there are 3 billion plus people when you say every member of the global workforce. And then primarily my job is to go out into the world and do conversations like this, help everyone really know at an individual level, but also to organizational and systemic level, what we need to do to create not just new work, which is coming no matter what, but better work and ultimately more human work.
All right. So I want to jump in a little bit before we talk about all of the crazy stuff that's coming. And again, AI has already made a disruption around the world of work, but we're, I think one of the things that we talked about before the show was that it's going to have even more of an impact. But I want to set the table with talk about the history of work, from the early days when we were farmers and agricultural and all of that sense, so that we can get a sense of where it's going from where we were.
Yeah, and I have to give credit to the book Sapiens, which I encourage everyone to read, because it really was the push for me to say, wait, before we think ahead and think about how work's going to change, let's remind ourselves, almost as an anthropologist, with what work has been and why it got to where it is today. So the most important thing for everyone to realize is that work, which most of us spend so much of our life doing, has never been built around humans. Work has never been built around human capability. Work has always been built around technology and technological capability, especially in the more recent centuries around what are called general purpose technologies. So let's do a quick history of work.
Okay.
For thousands of years, for millennia, we're, as humans, in what I call a goods economy. So largely agriculture, the big technology way back was the plow, but most humans for most of time just worked in agriculture, largely physical abilities. The 1700s is where you see the first real general purpose technology, the steam engine. It starts to change everything. And what do we mean by general purpose technology? It's a technology that hits the scene that sort of spreads into everything everywhere, has the ability to keep improving, and then importantly, is the foundation for entirely new waves of innovation that come as a result. So the steam engine, it's a invention, but it leads to manufacturing, industrialization, urbanization. It leads to a whole new economy and way of work for humans. So that's the first real general purpose technology. But guess what? As we go from agriculture to manufacturing, the human role at work is still largely the same. It's still largely physical ability.
Okay.
It just changes a little bit in terms of what that is, but it's still physical ability. You then have the next big general purpose technology, electricity. Again, changes everything about how we live and work. It starts to lead to all these new innovations. Guess what? Doesn't really change yet for humans. Still largely physical ability, just makes manufacturing happen at new scale, industrialization, transportation. The third general purpose technology is the one that hits in some of our lifetimes, computing. That, again, changes everything.
Okay.
But now it does start to change the human role at work. Now we start shifting from physical abilities to intellectual abilities. This is when high school becomes a really important thing. Eventually, college becomes a really important thing. Computer science degrees become a really important thing. business school degrees, the consultant MBA becomes a really important thing. That all starts to play out and change a little bit of the human role at work. The fourth general purpose technology is now AI.
Okay.
And we're early in it. But the way to think about AI is like electricity, like computing, like the steam engine. It's going to feed into everything. It's going to change everything, but then it's going to create these new waves of innovation. So then the question is, okay, is it like electricity, where it doesn't really change the baseline role for humans? Or is it like computing, where we actually change the skills needed for humans? My bet is that it's the latter, that it's going to be like computing, something that changes our economy. So I'm predicting what's called a relationship or innovation economy that's coming. And we're going to have gone from physical ability as the core of human work, which robots are going to do more and more of, from intellectual ability as more recent core of work, which generative AI and tools are going to do more and more of, to social abilities being at the center of work, people skills, people-to-people collaboration.
All right, so I just felt like I was just on the carousel of progress at Disney World, where you just took me through years.
But more properly described, the carousel of limited progress if we talk about the human role at work.
Right. Okay, so the idea here is that again, if robotics and automation ends up doing most of the physical labor, and you got AI doing most of the intellectual labor, humans are somewhere in the middle, correct? And so it's not like that humans are just going to go away and we're all going to be sitting on a big couch like in that movie WALL-E, right? We're not like you're thinking we're not going to do that. Like we are still going to be doing things that are productive so that we get paid so that we can eat, correct?
And not just doing things, doing better things, doing more human things. This was my big reaction to the conversations last year that were fatalistic about humans at work, that basically said, okay, we've done all we can do and every technology is going to be better at us at everything we do. So like game over, it was great while it lasted. Let's plan for, a workerless world of work. That misses the fact that physical ability and intellectual ability not only is not all we can do, it isn't even our most competitive skill set, our most competitive set of abilities. Those come from our social abilities, the stuff that's at the intersection of our EQ and IQ, creativity, curiosity, compassion, courage, communication. We've talked about those and undervalued them as soft skills. And even now we're like, oh yeah, everyone's going to need more and more of these. But I think people are missing the reason these are going to go to the center is because of innovation. Again, like a quick look back at history, we generally misconstrue economic growth to be entirely about efficiency of production. And that is minimizing the human role to increase the productivity of the output of products. When I describe every one of those general purpose technologies, guess how they started? A human had an idea.
Yeah.
And then that human turned that idea into an invention, into an industry, into a new economy. We have not allowed all humans who have ideas to be able to easily turn those ideas into inventions, industries. That's what's coming. So it isn't just, oh, your social abilities are going to matter more. Our role, all of us as humans, as uniquely to technology able to innovate, to imagine, is actually what work is going to be about. Innovating at work as employees at every level, and then innovating as work as entrepreneurs, which I think is going to be the big result of this new economy, more entrepreneurship.
So is it a case of where, again, with the computing, I don't want to call it a revolution, but for lack of a better word at this point, I'll say that, when computing, made that next phase of work, there was disruption in the beginning, and then eventually more and more ideas came about, like you said, and now and then people adapted to that and were able to find new jobs, find new work.
Yeah.
So you're thinking that AI will make the same thing?
Yeah, this is important because at the end of the day, everyone's like, what does this mean for me, my job, and my career? This all sounds great as you talk about the species, but like, what does it mean for me? So we know from every one of the industrial revolutions and every one of these general purpose technologies that we have never seen a net loss in terms of overall employment. So let's take computing as an example. Let's take ATMs as an example. Everyone thought when they hit the scene, bank tellers, you're done. Like, why do we need you if we have ATMs to dispense cash? For decades after ATMs, the number of bank tellers went up. It's only very recently they're starting to, or more recently, go down because of e-banking generally. But what bank tellers shifted to was more about mortgages, brand building for the banks, just less and less cash dispensing, which made the job different, but also better. It also meant, by the way, you could put ATMs in suburbs where you could just have one bank teller because you have someone, with the ATM that can give cash. So now you can add jobs there. So it changed jobs. And then you had all sorts of new jobs that didn't exist before, that have emerged out of computing, including like data scientists didn't exist as a job. All the social media managers, everything we're doing right now, like this didn't exist. So we will see not just jobs change, and we're seeing that with our data. 70% of the skills for the average job will have changed by 2030, but we are going to see new jobs emerge. 50% of the jobs on the rise this year on our LinkedIn list didn't exist in 2000.
Yeah.
MIT has a stat, like 60% of employment in 2018 didn't exist in 1940. So we're going to see jobs change, but we're going to see new jobs emerge. I will concede to those who are like, well, past is not precedent. AI is totally different, that there are ways that AI is totally different. And so we will have to see exactly how this plays out in terms of what's similar from the past and what's different from the past. But we have a pretty consistent track record across millennia of jobs changing and jobs getting created more than jobs disappearing.
Yeah. So, again, I've been in the job market for 30 plus years. That's as much as I'm willing to admit. Again, your initial first job out of school, what was it?
I did a Fulbright overseas and then started as an overnight assignment editor at CNN. I was freelance working from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Right.
And just knew my schedule week by week.
Right.
It was like the most entry level for journalism.
Right. So my first job was a newspaper journalist. I was a general assignment reporter for a small newspaper down in Southwest Florida. And since then, my job and my career has changed completely. And now I call myself a content creator or, content of, creator of all sorts. I'm a writer, I'm an editor, I'm a podcast person, I do videos, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously within the scope of my 30 years, just within the computing space, it's changed so much because of all of these industries being disrupted. So I guess I'm not afraid of the next wave, also because I'm probably not going to see the end result at some point. Because again, I think there will be an end result, but it's just that journey between now and then that gets everybody all nervous about AI. Is that fair?
Yeah, there's four phases of change. Again, if we look at past as precedent, the disruption hits, we're in that phase. Like 75% of global knowledge workers are using AI at work. It is in our day-to-day. Like we are even moving past the idea that it's just going to lead to layoffs. We're trying to really understand how it's playing out in different roles. Second phase, jobs change. I mentioned 70% of the skills for the average job are going to have changed by 2030. Third is new jobs emerge. We are only seeing this around AI jobs. I think if you and I were to do this exact conversation, even in just a few years, let alone 5, we are going to be talking about job titles that we can't even predict right now, but that we can predict are going to be anchored more around this idea of human capability and innovation at work. But there's going to be a whole bunch of new jobs. So if you are coming out of college, you're early in your career, do not worry about a 10 or 15 year plan that is based on job titles. Just focus on your skills and what expertise you're building. And then the fourth phase is we end up in a new economy. And I am highly confident, because I spend all my time thinking about it, that we are going to end up in a new economy that has humans at the center of it and human capability at the center of it. It's not like we're going to disappear.
Okay, so I'm okay with the concept here of of humans in the middle of something. You've got physical labor on the one side, and again, you're not saying 100% of physical labor is going to go away, right?
I mean, we're already seeing like a lot of the trades crafts are becoming higher paid. And career building jobs, because those are ones that robotics is still far away from being able to do.
Right.
And that even as it gets there, humans are going to want other humans really involved in some of these things. And that's true for healthcare. That's true for retail. That's true for hospitality.
And there's going to be on the other end of, AI is not going to take over all of the intelligence part of the world.
Yes. Right.
So there are going to be some outliers, but for the majority where the humans are in the middle. Have you seen, can you predict what a day in the day in the life will look like, or is that still that fuzzy middle that we don't know?
Anyone that wants to find out what this is going to look like, talk to any software engineer, because I think they are in that first wave. Like the 5 first wave jobs I'm tracking: software engineers, recruiters, customer service reps, entry-level workers broadly, and people managers broadly. So software engineers are super interesting because they are sort of the prototypical role of the knowledge economy. And so when I did a New York Times op-ed last year, sort of like laying the groundwork for this relationship innovation economy coming, the key data point that we found in our data was that 96% of a software engineer's job was vulnerable to AI, being able to do it now or very soon. 96% of the skills, largely coding language that software engineers bring to work, AI either can or very soon will be able to do.
Okay.
So the sort of old math version of what to react to that with is, oh God, don't be a software engineer. Everyone stop being a software engineer. That isn't actually what's happening. Like ATMs with bank tellers, what you're seeing instead, and we have data from GitHub, also part of the sort of like Microsoft family like LinkedIn, software engineer jobs aren't going down, but how software engineers are getting hired is changing. People need less of a CS degree because AI will help code, and more of the thinking of a CS degree that you could get from all sorts of different places. Goldman Sachs has already been saying, I want someone who has also a philosophy degree. If you have a CS degree, that's not enough because I want you to come in and help us have an ethical framework to what we're building. So software engineers are not going away. Some of them are getting deeper in terms of technical expertise around AI and machine learning, but generally they're becoming more about communicating to other teams, communicating to customers, helping shape strategic planning with a sort of ethical mindset. So that's a great example of, I think for most of us, our job isn't going to disappear. It's going to shift. So get ahead of that shift. If your job is going to disappear, it's because the tasks in your job or at a basic enough level that AI or current robotics can do. So that should mean if you get your head in the game and think about your skills and what you want to build expertise on, you should end up in a better job that has better tasks. The last thing I'd say for anyone everywhere, what do I do about everything that Anish is saying? Stop thinking about jobs as titles. Stop thinking about yourself as someone who has or had or wants job titles. Think about jobs as tasks, your current one, your future one. Think about tasks in three buckets: tasks that AI or robotics or technology is going to do more and more on its own, tasks that you're going to do with a robot or an AI agent, and then tasks that you're going to uniquely be doing as a human. If you do that map across your current or future job, and a lot of the tasks of that job are in that first bucket, that's a job you want to pivot away from.
Okay.
If a lot of the tasks are in the second bucket, you want to be super smart on the latest tools, the latest technology. And then everyone wants to more and more start indexing around that third bucket and those 5 C's I talked about.
Okay. And so again, when is this, do you think this is going to happen? Is it going to be eventually, like we're going to see all this stuff just eventually take over or eventually move to this new model? Or is it going to be like, oh, next year? I don't know. It feels like it's going to be eventual as more people kind of leave the job market, and then you've got new ones entering the job market. And then those of us in the middle are we're like, oh God, I've got to change my job again, or I've got to change my skills again.
Yeah, the short answer is it already happened.
Yeah.
One of the things that can really create anxiety is to feel unprepared for something that's already happened. So just start to get prepared. It already happened. We're already seeing the beginnings of this shift from the knowledge economy to this new economy. You're seeing a lot of coverage last week on MBAs, elite MBAs, where people are graduating from the Harvards and not getting a job. And even a career counselor at Harvard who got a Harvard MBA herself said in a Wall Street Journal article, Harvard is not the differentiator. You need to have the skills. That to me is a good indication of sort of the old is already starting to shift. The good news is don't ignore it. Don't get anxious about it. Don't let yourself wait for this change to hit you. Just start getting in the mix of what is AI, what are tools, and start getting in the mix of seeing yourself skills first. And you'll very quickly, if you treat it like going to the gym every day, you start changing how you think about your job, your career, you'll get to a place you should. And I think this is 100% true for everyone who does this work, to a place of greater agency. Like you'll have a more determined, intentional sense of what you want to do, where you want to do it, what you want to be, where you want to be that. Than you've ever had before. Because again, the old world of work was not human-centric. Everything that we defined ourselves as professionally, someone gave us or didn't give us. We either got a degree or didn't get a degree. We either got that job title at that big employer or we didn't get that job title at that big employer. We either got a connection to the people that could get us jobs or we didn't. All of how humans have been at work has been lacking agency because everything that defined us, we couldn't control.
Okay.
This new world, you can control your skills, both what you say you've got and then how you go get the skills that you need to get the jobs you want.
So it sounds like you've already answered my next question, which is who has to change their mindset first? Is it the employee and the job applicant versus the company? Do companies have to change their mindset of how they're handling what an employee is, or what do they even call them employees anymore? Because again, I think you have seen some companies that are adopting this new strategy, right? Or at least they're thinking about it, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the meta things I think is going to be true is people are not going to take it as a given that they have to go work at a big company as the place for their career. I think entrepreneurship is going to emerge. There are going to be more companies with fewer employees, more options. So like that whole dynamic in terms of hiring, I think is going to shift. And at the center of it, before we get to like who goes first, we have to realize that the labor market, if you define the goal of the labor market as matching talent and opportunity, and so like recruiters are on one side of that and job seekers are on the other, to support economic growth for companies and economies, to support economic mobility for workers and communities, it has sucked at that forever. I mean, if you agree with that definition, the labor market is one of the least transparent, least efficient, least accessible markets that humans have ever created. At the center of it entirely is guesswork. You, at any job, at any company, don't know if you're overpaid or underpaid, don't know if you're overqualified or underqualified. And guess what? The company doesn't know either. You've never put at the center of work an objective way to get to a meritocratic process of hiring.
Yeah.
So this is going to get messy, and it's going to happen in multiple places all at once. I would say it's not on one side to go first and the other to follow. Like both sides are going to have to move. You're already seeing members on LinkedIn, for example, more and more define themselves by their skills. It's like over 140% increase in members like who are putting skills on their profile, identifying as skills, even starting to list their AI skills. I'll give you my own version of that. My career makes no sense by job title. I'm like a war correspondent who becomes a presidential speechwriter who does growth at startups and then economic impact at Facebook and then with California governors down at LinkedIn. So I could, as I did for a while, get really insecure about how do I sell myself. Like people will be like, oh, you have an interesting background, but we have no idea what the hell to do with you.
And we have no idea what title to give you either.
Yeah. Or like, what can you do? And I'm like, everything. And they're like, we don't want anyone that can do everything because that means you can't do any one thing really well. And so it was really hard. And then I shifted to skills. Whole career, explanatory storytelling. Mid-career, added coalition building. That was partly business development at companies. It was policy campaigns in the policy sphere. And then economic opportunity became this like issue of expertise. So now the job I have is a job that's like built for my skill sets and this moment and this place I work to help LinkedIn be this bigger deal to everyone.
Yeah.
So that's an example of how individuals can start to move first by going with a skills mindset. You are seeing more and more companies move to this skills mindset. You're seeing more and more recruiters filter for skills. You're seeing more and more companies index on skills for performance like IBM. So it's going to come and it's going to come quick. And this is the last thing I'd say on skills. Skills we've talked about forever and it's felt conceptual and mushy, and it's all been about the skills you don't have that you need to go get rather than skills you do have that you just need to articulate. Where the lag has been is that it's easier to filter for degrees. And again, if you assume that guesswork is at the center of the labor market, every hirer is trying to mitigate their risk of a bad hire. So if you have this degree, no one's going to yell at me if you do a bad job. But if I take a risk on you and you don't do a good job, people are going to say, why'd you take that risk?
Sure.
We've always been trying to get skills to be as easy to filter for as degrees. And there's taxonomies, but then they're dated by the time new technology comes. AI is going to be actually a big tool in building, and we got to think about bias. We got to think about responsible AI. But we're going to get to a skills-based labor market, I think, pretty quickly. And it's going to happen in a way I can't predict, though. It's going to happen in fits and starts and then suddenly be everywhere.
Wow. Okay. So I had like 3 questions in my head and then I completely forgot them. So I'm going to jump back a little bit. So when we're talking about, all right, so you're talking about skills, but doesn't that also mean that the people that are looking for work or looking for, well, the people that are looking for to hire someone, don't they have to change their mindset and get rid of all of this using AI to filter through resumes and, because this just seems like garbage to me when you look at how hard it is for people to try to find jobs. If I changed my skill set or if I changed my resume or whatever to represent this new skills-based thinking, I wouldn't even know where to look for a new job because all of the listings are still titles, or, roles and things like that. So, how do I jump ahead if all of the job listings are still same and you still got companies that are using, the software to basically filter me out?
Yeah, this is a really important point. Where we are right now in all of this, AI is today a tool that is helping everyone do more. And that it's important to call out that more is not better. It's up to us to train AI, and it's up to ourselves as people on both sides of the hiring equation to do better. So let's take applying for a job or hiring someone for a job. AI is helping everyone apply to more jobs more easily, and it is helping recruiters screen more applicants more easily, but that itself is not better. We've got data, 40% of job seekers say they're applying to more jobs, but hearing back less. So more is not better.
Right.
3 out of 5 recruiters are saying they're seeing a mismatch of skills from applicants. So more is not better. So better is what we've got to focus on when it comes to AI. And that, I mean, honestly, that's what we spend all day, every day at LinkedIn. Again, we are a platform of people. We are all about how do we help people with this technology, every member, economic opportunity. And so I think part of what we're trying to do, one, all job descriptions on LinkedIn, we're pushing companies to map to skills. So it isn't just copy, paste, old job title, old responsibilities, old degree requirements. More and more recruiters are using those skills. But there are 2 AI features I'd call out, and these are just representative. These are what LinkedIn's doing, but they're broadly representative, and people should look for these type of AI tools. We've got a jobs match feature now that shows how your skills line up with open positions. Because even if you've never thought skills before, that's a hard thing to start overnight.
Yeah.
And to know, okay, what are my top 3 skills? And then what are those 3 skills related to job postings and industries and sectors and functions? So we're using AI to help you figure that out.
Okay.
On the hiring side, we've got like
Well, I don't want this to turn into a commercial for LinkedIn.
Yeah. But this is representative.
Okay.
So let's make it not us, but us.
You could say other job skills, other job search places or job.
Yeah.
things.
And so, okay, let's do it this way.
Okay.
When you're looking for AI tools, look for those that are helping you do more, because everyone's using those. So you don't want to not be part of what's happening, but understand more is not enough. More is not better. Look for tools that are also helping you do better. So what are the tools that are helping you figure out your skills match? Or as a recruiter, what are the tools helping you not just clear out your time screening, but do a better job of both training the AI to screen and then interviewing candidates, all of that stuff. Everyone who is using AI correctly, is using AI, no excuse at this point not to use AI, not to at least know what you could be doing with it and use it for the everyday table stakes, but then should be doing something differently because of AI. You should have more time. If AI is applying to your jobs for you and writing those cover letters and adapting your resume to all these jobs, that's a lot of time you're not doing that work. Right. What are you doing with that time? Are you building your network? Are you being more intentional about the strategic planning of your career? If you're a recruiter, are you going out to these pipelines to find the best candidates and investing more and trying to convince them to come in? So use AI, but that is not the end in itself.
Right.
AI just needs more.
Right. So it's not like use AI and then go sit on the couch and watch TV for 4 hours.
Yes. You will have done enough to be using AI, which everyone needs to be.
Yeah.
But you will not be distinguishing yourself in the age of AI, because you've got to push yourself to do different and get to better.
All right. I remembered my other question from before. And so could you say that the trend of people that are doing the job hopping, where they're working for a company for 2 to 3 years and then jumping to another job, that always was looked at as a bad thing to do back in the early days of my career. It was always no, you really want to find a job where you can work 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But it feels like that. Could you say that the new trend of job hopping is now actually preferred versus this 20-year thing? And is that a result of this shift towards this new work world?
Well, as someone who's changed jobs every year and a half for 22 years, my bias would be yes, we were right all along.
Yeah, maybe I'm asking the wrong person, because you're of course it's a great idea.
But even as someone that wants it to be the new norm, but not even a yes and yes, but it's not job hopping that's going to be the thing. So we have data that professionals today who are coming into the labor market are going to have twice as many jobs as we did 15 years ago. So yes, people are going to have more jobs in their career. The way people job hopped before, and I think you and I are sort of maybe outliers of it, even as we're part of the broader group that had a lot of jobs. It was generally either because they didn't know what they wanted to do, and so they were just bumping around as interesting things emerged, and they didn't like where they were working, so they wanted to go work somewhere else, or they were trying to honestly increase their compensation. And so job hopping has been objectively proven to be a good way that every few years you can get a bump.
Yeah.
That isn't what I think this new economy is going to mean when we say people are going to have twice as many jobs. And this is what I think about that. careers are going to change from sort of straight to the right lines, like these predictable, pick a place, pick a job, and then rise up as far as you can at that place in that job function until you retire, to sort of this squiggly line. They're going to go from ladders to paths. So career is going to be this thing that you're constantly building, which means at the end of the day, you're constantly learning, you're constantly adapting, you're constantly trying to better define who you are and take it to the next level, wherever and however that happens. I would think of careers coming forward as like these three phases. In your 20s, this is entirely skill development, including skills that you try and are not great at, or that you're good at that you don't enjoy, but also skills that you try and you're good at it and you do enjoy. Like you're starting to hone my version of explanatory storytelling, like in your 20s. What's your core differentiated skill? Your 30s is where you then start to build expertise, because like skills isn't enough. AI can do a lot of stuff, but you want to be able to tell AI what to do for you based on this knowledge set that you're gaining and growing. So that could be around an issue like economic opportunity. It could be around a sector like healthcare. It could be around a function like marketing. But in your 30s, you want to start sort of like picking a lane where you can start to take your skills and apply it to some expertise. And then I think in your 40s and beyond, you're really looking at where do I want to have an impact with this skill set and this expertise, and what does that role look like at that time that I'm looking to have that impact. So yes, you're going to have more jobs if you're starting your career, but you're not going to just job hop with the same reasons that people job hopped before if you're doing it right. You're moving to build skills, to then build on those with expertise, to then find a place of impact that then you don't want to move anymore because you're in one of the few places that allows you to go deep and build.
Okay. All right. So with this skills-based mindset that we're talking about, we didn't bring up education, but it feels like the colleges, and I'm going through that with my kids. They're all at that age where they're starting to look at college. One of them is in college. How does this change? I mean, obviously, it feels like colleges and higher education has to change, and then eventually it has to come down to the almost the high school and grade school level too, right? Because you used to be able to go to school to train for a particular job or you weren't thinking about skills, you were thinking about jobs, right? Yeah. So that has to change too, right?
Every system around economic opportunity and work. So I define them as the three E's: education, employment, and entrepreneurship. Every one of those systems is going to have to get redesigned. That's partly why we created this role. Like we've got to, as LinkedIn, both in terms of the obligation and opportunity, we've got go help everyone understand how to do this.
Yeah.
So again, let's look to the past first. Like the systems of education we have were largely built around work as it shifted around the technology. Before that, by the way, the liberal arts existed as education that was meant entirely not to be about work. It was for the free mind. So education and employment were totally separate until we start combining them with the industrial revolutions, and high school becomes a thing because manufacturing plants need managers. And that's really where we start saying, okay, agriculture and fastening tools, isn't enough. We're going to have to need this new thing. High school becomes a thing, and then college. One of the things I think everyone needs to realize is that even though you have gone through all sorts of phases of learning, we generally have not taught people how to learn, how to think. We removed curiosity from learning as we made it this sort of like one size fits all around the technical skills that work required. And so everyone's been in a IQ-based, one size fits all, technical skill anchored K-12 higher ed world for like a century. That's all got to shift. And I think at every level, with a skills mindset, educators have to think about technical and non-technical skills. So the technical skills are fluency in AI, but a lot of that is going to be using the tools and practical real world experience as you get to college and grad school. The durable non-technical skills are really the 5 C's I talked about. So that is largely in the bucket of the humanities, but like math had to do in the 19th century, you started to see these degrees of applied mathematics. Mm-hmm. So like math was totally abstract until we had engineers and needed people to have a degree that was assigned to the tasks of the job. I think you're going to have applied humanities start to emerge so that you take philosophy or the connection of philosophy and neuroscience and apply it to some practical implication at work strategy, workplace innovation, organizational psychology, whatever it may be. So those are going to have to change. The systems of education are going to take a bit to change. They're not built to change. They're actually in some ways disincentivized to change.
Yeah.
So for the individual, none of this is binary. It's not like don't go to college, definitely go to college. It's not like do a CS degree, don't do a CS degree. Don't have that kind of mindset. Again, skills first, experience second.
Yeah.
What are the things that you actually want to do that you enjoy doing? And then what are the durable skills that you're going to be able to learn however you learn them? And importantly, how are you going to define the credibility of those skills? Because that's going to come before we have all these new ways to credential that. And then what are the tools that you're developing that technological expertise around?
What do the academics say to you when you tell them this? Do they just look at you and go, "You have three heads," or "You're crazy," or "This will never happen," or like, or are they open to these ideas?
All of it. I mean, I think, again, a lot of my
I got to ask tougher questions, Anish.
Well, the altitude I'm at is sort of objectively true. You can't really debate that work has never been about humans, that the labor market was built to be broken, that these systems of education, employment, and entrepreneurship were built off the brokenness of the labor market. But then it can be really hard for people to understand how to process that and how to think about it as something they could be part of. With educational institutions, I will say more and more they're excited about what to do, because don't forget, prior to this moment, we've been seeing this building of momentum for change in education as college costs went up, even as durability of degree went down. And so consumers, the people who are going to college, were like, hey, what's this about? Why am I paying more for a degree that isn't helping me better get a job?
Yeah.
And so that started the pressure. And then I think the way that work is changing is pushing the conversation of education to actually be about employment in a way that it hasn't always been in the US. One of my startups was an educational technology, ed tech startup, opening up access to college around employability. How do we help more people get the degrees that lead to employment? And I can't tell you how many people came at me saying, education isn't about employment. Education is about, again, liberal arts, free thought. And yes, like that's partly what it needs to be about, although we can look at the rise of disinformation and wonder whether we've done a great job on that. But it has to also be about helping people with economic opportunity and economic mobility. So I think there's a lot of interest. I just met with the dean of a business school last week who's AI first at their business school and is thinking about all of these big questions, and not just AI now, but what is professionalism later, this new curiosity-driven leader, not judgment-driven leader. I think the big open question is how do we get from here to there? And because our systems are so entrenched, because the incentives are so against change and dynamism. So that's where I'm spending a lot of my time with the kind of people who sit behind the systems at the top to help them connect the big stories of change with the day-to-day realities of their middle manager or of their professor, to think about how would you connect those two together and actually get us to better step by step.
Yeah, I'll tell you, you've mentioned philosophy twice, and that made me think I have a cousin who is a professor of philosophy. I think he teaches down in Tennessee. And it used to be, philosophy majors were the big joke. You'd be like, oh, well, what kind of job are you going to get after you graduate with this? And you become a professor. That was basically what you do. So does this mean like the philosophy majors out there, they're going to be ruling the world someday in this new, or the other humanities or liberal arts?
Again, like in the same way that we all know how to use the internet at some level, I think the future economy is we all are going to be philosophers at some level, because we're going to just have to think more about the human mind and human capability and human creativity, all the things that generally the humanities and the philosophy degrees have done. That doesn't mean that you can just walk into any hiring place right now and be like, I'm a philosophy major. And they'll be like, thank God you're here.
Here's $500,000.
Yeah, no, you've got to explain why that matters to that job. The humanities departments at universities have to establish applied humanities as degrees so that employers get the connection. But also you have to be mindful that we're all going to become inevitably mini philosophers. So if you are going to own that, you've got to be even better than all of us who are, I now every day study philosophy, and I use my AI tools to help me get smarter about how did the Romans and the Stoics think about this? How did the Buddhists and the Eastern philosophies think about this? Because before the Industrial Revolutions, a lot of humans spent a lot of time thinking about what it was to be human. We then stopped doing that because we got so shrunk at work into these tasks, and we got so distracted in our lives with all this new technology. So there's a lot to learn around ethics, around big, gnarly questions from the past. So everyone's going to start doing that. So if you're a philosophy major, you should be ahead of everyone if you're doing it right. But everyone's going to be catching up to you. So don't just sit and think that the fact that you've got that degree is all you need.
All right. So Anish, other than yourself, have you seen other people that have adopted this mindset or this this feeling. I don't want to call it this. I want to, like, who else that you've met should people be, I don't want to say following, because then it makes it sound like you're in a cult or you're a cult leader.
What I would say is, I think,
like, who else has this mindset?
Yeah. So the way to filter for it, I've decided, is who's pro-human. And I was going to say who's not, but I don't think the not pro-human people are anti-human.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be anti-human.
Yeah, but I will say, drive around San Francisco and there are billboards that say stop hiring humans. I mean, part of the sell of AI is that it can replace humans. And I think that is not only short-sighted and incorrect, but it is whatever the not pro-human thing is, it is pro-human versus diminished sense of self-human. Because again, we talked about it, like, humans have never done all we can do. So to say that humans are done because what we've done to date can be done by technology misses this bigger question of what could we do at work that we've never done before, based on the amazingness that is the human brain. And human intelligence is equally inspiring as artificial intelligence. So look for people that are pro-human. I mean, I think if you're interested in this just like as a subject matter, neuroscientists are sort of the people I'm tracking as they start to get more into workforce development. They only really work with athletes and the military.
Okay.
They haven't been brought to the center of work because the mind's going to go there. IBM's doing interesting stuff. Walmart, LinkedIn, obviously, we are constitutionally pro-human because we're a platform of people. So we go where the species goes. But really, I think everyone right now should get themselves to a pro-human place, however they need to do that. Maybe that's going and reading philosophy. Maybe that's thinking about your job and wondering whether your job really lets you be creative, curious, courageous, like all the things that you do outside of work. Like, where's the mismatch between your job and what you love to do outside of work and who you are outside of work?
Yeah.
Really find your curiosities and let that inspire you to learn constantly every day. But if you just get to pro-human, first for yourself, and then for your work and for career building, like, everything gets better. Because you have to understand, it's not just the world of work that has not been human-centric. Culture, like the nation state and politics and even religion, like all of these institutions we grow up in have not helped us be better at understanding who we are as humans individually and feeling really good and driven about who we are. So just get to that.
If we can get to this shift, do you think that it would affect those other institutions as well?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Because imagine a world of work where your pay and performance is tied to how good a human you are. Are you getting better at empathy? Are you getting better at collaboration? Are you getting better at disagreeing in a non-disagreeable way? I mean, these are things that are lacking in a lot of cultures and a lot of like political conversations around the world.
Yeah.
My big hope is that we are looking at a world of work that is going to require us all to be better humans as part of work at every level of work. And if we all start to become better humans at work, which we will respond to the incentive systems of work because we want to get paid, we want to get promoted, we want to build lives because economic opportunity is critical to human existence and agency and freedom, we all might start to just be better humans.
Yeah.
And that'll be really interesting to think about what that means for us at a societal level.
Does that mean my sarcasm and cynicism has to go away if for me to become a better
that's part
human?
of being human, right? I mean, that's part of what leads to innovation. That's why, the best comics are some of the best anthropologists that exist because of how they are able to find the funny in things and inspire us to just laugh and then be able to process things. It's all part of what is human.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, that's why I believe that there is still a role for journalists to at least question everything and not take everything at face value. And it feels like we lost that a little bit over the last 10 years, especially with technology where you can post an instant opinion without actually thinking about it and not actually or taking somebody at their word versus really questioning because you're afraid that you're not going to be in part of the in crowd if you actually question a company, for example. In the product review space, like it's like you won't get a product if you actually have a bad review. You won't get a future one if you say that the new Apple VR Vision Pro is bad, for example.
Yeah, I yes. And I think that part of why I drifted from journalism, even as I've retained the skill set of explanatory storytelling, is I think we're missing more sort of subject matter expertise journalists. Like journalism writ large has become more and more, for all sorts of reasons, wired around the everyday conversation. So you're just becoming an expert at conversing around whatever it is that is the topic of the day.
Right.
And I think you're going to actually see more, and it'll start at a local level. It'll start small before it goes big. A return to sort of, again, that expertise that I talked about, because it is with that expertise that you have not just the ability to be curious in the ways that technology can, because AI can look back and see patterns. The curious journalist with expertise can like look forward and know patterns, but start to see how they're playing out differently. You also will have that credibility that people will look to. And you see that still in some journalists, but I think that'll become more and more, maybe at a micro level more than at a mass level or macro level.
Yeah. But
that's the role of journalists, and the role of journalism has been storytelling that sort of provoked new thinking, that provoked new pushback, that provoked new policies and new, ways of understanding the world. At one level, everyone gets to do that now, which I think is a good thing, because the old school was like only the people that were anointed, again, with the job title of being the voice of truth, got to do that. But what we've missed in this sort of ability for everyone to be able to have a voice is still this need for the expertise and curiosity that I am starting to see come back a little bit.
All right, I'm going to have you on a different show, or we're going to have to talk separately about how journalism has been, in fact, impacted over the last 10 to 15 years, because sometimes I think that we're definitely not going down the right path. But I did want to ask you one final question here. You already mentioned that we're already in this disruption. You're already seeing this move towards this new model of humans in the middle, et cetera, et cetera. But it is what's your time frame for this? Is it a generational shift? We have to wait for more traditional people to retire, and then the people coming up need to adopt this new philosophy. The schools have changed, or the skills. Is this going to be a 10-year thing, or 50 years down the road, or somewhere in between those, or even less than 10?
I think 10 is a good marker. And again, I'm looking at the past, given that it's all we've got to predict, but also that there's some unknowns. If you think about like Thomas Edison to Steve Jobs, so like electricity to computing, you think about these general purpose technologies and like the shrinking time between them.
Yep.
So Edison to Jobs is about like, I think 80 years or so. Then you think about like computing, and Jobs is like the consumer, innovator of it, but there are a bunch of people. But that to now is about like 30, 40 years. It's like the mid 90s to now, which is what's interesting about this moment. You have a bunch of people in positions of leadership who were alive and were part in their 20s of the early build of this last general purpose technology, which is why you have all this different thinking, this different energy. You didn't have that in the past ones because they took a while between them. So you've gone from like 80 to 30. I mean, every data set you look at, MIT, the job change, 60% change in what the jobs were between 2018 and 1940.
Right.
Our data set, 50% change over the past 20 years. So the time frame is shrinking. You have a bunch of compounding change technologies at play right now. I mean, there's like upwards of 10 that people are looking at.
Of course.
So I would say that the rate of change is going up. The time frame for change is going down. So I would say 5 to 10 years is a good marker for everyone to have. But again, it already happened.
Yeah.
Like we're already in it. It's just about how it plays out to levels that are represented all around us versus it's already in all of our days, day to day. And if it's not, it's there and you're just missing it.
All right. So I think the best advice I would have is that if you're watching this and you like what Anish is saying, just follow him on LinkedIn, right? Like that's probably the best way to do it. Because I think you're writing a lot of stuff on that platform too, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Anish, I want to have you on like 6 other shows. I've got some other ideas for you. So thanks for taking the time and joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's all the time we have for today's episode. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any thoughts you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.